The worst case scenario, I think, for any executive traveler is to be in a crisis halfway across the world and have no one to call.
If you send 50 people to a conference in a foreign country and there's an earthquake, a hurricane, an active shooter, a bombing, whatever the case might be, that CEO and that company now have the duty of care to address that problem, to safeguard their employees, to safeguard their infrastructure, and to safeguard what they're doing online. We believe that the world is changing at such a rate that anyone who has generated wealth, you're now being targeted. The one thing the government does extremely well is they invest and spend enormous amounts of money training people. If we want a population of operators with those kinds of skill sets that are going to answer the phone in 3 rings or less, or answer an email in 10 to 15 minutes every time for our client base, and not have someone following a script that hasn't been in crisis, that hasn't been in a combat zone, or hasn't been in a denied area, Washington, D.C. was the natural fit. This concept of being a one-button, comprehensive service for the client, it was born out of some beta testing that we did. And what we learned was every one of these headquarters had anywhere between 7 to 15 different vendors. They've got a vendor for aircraft, they've got a vendor for travel assistance, they've got a vendor for medical, they have a vendor for cyber, they've got a vendor for intelligence, and so on and so forth. What we identified early on was this concept of having 9 to 10 to 15 different stovepipes is the weakness. You're going to have failure between these different teams. So we've built what we consider to be one of the most coherent ops centers in the industry. One side of the operations center is focused on car and driver and events and emergency security. The next part of this is you've got intel analysts monitoring the world 24 hours a day. The next piece is we've got a medical staff, and then lastly we have cyber analysts in the ops center. There's only a few companies that we've seen that have built a coherent ops center where they're monitoring their infrastructure, they're monitoring their cyber transactions, and they're monitoring the world for threat.
We provide a host of what we call custom intelligence products that are really geared towards the international traveler.
We have a global tracking app, which they can turn on and off at their leisure.
Global Guardian's Air Ambulance program transports members from a hospital to a hospital of their choice. If one of our members gets sick or injured while traveling abroad, we bring them home. Simple as that.
The bottom line is we wanted to control that narrative that you, the client, will be flown to any city or any hospital of your choosing.
Our competitors, a lot of them just specialize in either air ambulance or security services or intel, but we provide all of those things.
Another service that we have has to do with intel. So before they even take this trip, they may want to maybe just have a little summary of what's going on in that country. Is it a safe country? Is it just medium risk? Or is it okay to just, walk out my front door of my hotel and go down the street to get something to eat?
Once an emergency starts, someone is kidnapped, you've been hacked, someone is in a disaster zone or a natural disaster or an environment where politically the country's falling apart, trying to get a ground team to coordinate with an intel team to coordinate with a air ambulance or a aviation team to get them out of country, typically it falls apart. It's not seamless by any means, and those different vendors by contract are not going to coordinate that effort. So the intent of Global Guardian early on was, can you build a better model where it's considered one button? There's just one button to push, one email, one phone number at 3 o'clock in the morning when all these things start, and the entire platform stands up and now supports the client in the most comprehensive way.
So during the terrorist attacks in Paris, for example, we evacuated over 90 people from harm's way. In fact, we had one client that was literally in the theater next door to one of the sites of the terrorist attacks, and notified her that there was actually something occurring in her vicinity, and then worked to evacuate her and bring her to safety.
Somebody lost all their money. Somebody stole one of our clients' purse, and we just delivered some cash to them. Or help them get to the embassy to apply for a new passport or whatever it is. Simple things like that are just as important as reacting to a major situation.
We had a client who was in Kenya. She was there on a missionary trip, and she was in a car, and the car rolled over twice. She injured her neck, she broke both her arms, and required an air medical evacuation back home. So what Global Guardian did is, first we sent our security response team. The security response team met her at the airport as she was arriving. The response team provided guarantee of payment, so essentially the hospital was going to ask for $10,000, and the response team delivered the money. That allowed our client to enter the hospital and receive some sort of stabilization care. As long as you're stable and you can fly, we fly you home. Once the client had received the stabilization care, we then dispatched an aircraft that was based in Europe, and the aircraft got to Kenya in a matter of hours. From there, the aircraft took her to the Johns Hopkins facility, where she had surgery on her spine about 48 hours later.
When Hurricane Irma, which is Category 4 hurricane, came through the Virgin Islands, we had deployed within, I think, 24 hours after it passed. Flew down to Puerto Rico, and we were able to charter some boats to help evacuate hundreds, I think 1,200 people out of the Virgin Islands who were stranded. I was able to rent helicopters and airplanes, because like I said, I'm a pilot, so you don't get that kind of service and responsiveness with most companies, where we deploy almost immediately, and then we're on the ground and we can make almost anything happen.
We have staffed our 24/7 operation center with really highly skilled operators.
Nobody foresaw the Pearl Harbor invasion. No one foresaw the bombing in Boston. Nobody saw 9/11 coming. These events happened. So as you look at the world, all you can do is look at trend lines, knowing that anything could happen 5 minutes from now. Because you might not see the threat today, you might not see it tomorrow, but you want to know something's there when it happens.